Buenos dias. Buenos dias. This is how I yell at my team. Buenos, we don't say go Mavs anymore. We just say Buenos dias. Buenos dias. Everyone's awake after a 1 o'clock game.
Hi, good morning.
Good morning.
All right, this morning filled with such informational conversations. I've been looking forward to this for a couple of weeks now, so I'm glad that we're actually here to actually talk about something that's really important, I know, to the both of us, right? And how do we connect with our communities in an authentic way? So thank you to Iris for being here with us today. As mentioned, I'm Brian Norris, the Chief Revenue Officer at EW Scripps Company. Happy to be joined with Iris today. So Iris, before we get into community and how you show up with your team in the community, I'd love for this audience to really learn a bit about your journey. I find it so fascinating, and I think they would as well.
Well, I know I've met a few of you guys before, so I apologize if I'm repeating this story. Well, good morning, and thank you guys for having me. I think it's always fun to come to events like this. Pearl, can't say no to Pearl, but there she is. But the main thing for me, I think one thing that we certainly gravitate to this is I understand that it makes it more sense. It makes a lot of sense to make sure to consistently keep talking about everything that we're doing because it's important to have representation at the top. I didn't realize how important it was to be the only Mexican American in the NBA and the first woman in the CMO position for an NBA team, and how big that was. I didn't want to clap for that. I was going to clap for something else, but I lead in with that because you don't realize how it's much bigger than just being a CMO. It's actually being a part of the representation and why it makes more sense to have more Latino representation at the top, and obviously everywhere else at the different companies. For me, it was definitely not an easy journey. It took me 16 years to get to the Dallas Mavericks. It was a hard journey, but I think fully I had people around me to really support me and to really care about my success as much as I cared about my success. I used to work at the Dallas Morning News. I'm a Dallas native here, so my parents are from San Luis Potosí, so I'm Mexican. Thank you. By the way, I always get one clap. It's usually someone I know. Thank you for clapping. But they're from San Luis Potosí. I was born here. My first generation Mexican American. I have it's 5 of us. So it's like 3 sisters and a brother, which are very supportive of what I do. I am also the only one that went to college and said, okay, I'm going to keep going. I don't want to be another stereotype. I want to make sure that people see that Latinos are very educated and they also can be in positions like this. The goal was never to be a CMO, trust me. I just wanted to work and just have a good time. But hard work really paid off. The first year I was with the Mavs, I got hired on as a senior marketing manager, just to let you know where I started. And I was a senior marketing manager for 2 weeks. I became the director. After 2 weeks I was there. I think they realized that I meant business. I'm like, no, I'm going to take care of shit. So for me, I am going to make sure that you see what I know, and I'm going to prove to you, and I walk into rooms so that way I prove everybody wrong that we do belong here too. I became a director, and 14 months later I became the CMO, and here I am still. So for me, the biggest thing for me is work ethic, agility. That's things that I learned from my parents. My dad never calls into work. We are a very familiar family. My dad's in construction and my mom's a housekeeper. Till this day, they still won't retire, but that is where we get it from. That's where me and my sisters and my family get it from. So that's where I get the hardworking piece of it. The first year at the Mavs definitely was the hardest. Never slept. We had games going on, and it was one other director, and that was the marketing team. And now I have 23 folks that report to me. We have a bigger digital and social content team, as you guys can see. I know you guys are all following us on Mavs, but just don't talk about Friday or Saturday's game. I know that was tough for me. But for me, it was definitely really important to make sure that there was representation when I did get the position, and then when I became the CMO. I could care less about titles. Anyone that knows me, I don't really give a shit. To me, it's like, tell me who you are by showing up to work. Really come to play and really work hard. That's the best thing that you could do for anybody, any company here, even 7-Eleven and all the companies that you guys work at. For me, that's how you show up. Roll up your sleeves every single day. It doesn't matter what title you have to be human to everybody. Be kind to everybody. Make sure that you are yourself, your most authentic self, and that's why you get to keep your job, pretty much. So for me, that's really has been my journey, and that's why this topic was really, really important, and I think it was really exciting that me and Brian got paired up. And the first call, I think we were like, okay, this should have been the call. So anyway.
Yeah, thank you. It was, talk about that first call when you do these panels or fireside chats, you do these pre-calls, and within about 10 minutes, we knew that it was meant to be that we would have this conversation together. And literally the questions just went out the window. I have notes here just to make sure we don't go on a tangent, which could happen very easily, but a lot of what Iris said resonates with me. So a little bit I thought it'd be helpful to share a little bit about my journey. I've been in the television ad sales business for about 25 years. And when I started in the business, I started 6 days after I graduated from undergrad. And I started in an entry-level position at Lifetime Television as a sales assistant. And what's interesting is that I got a phone call from the head of HR my first week there. And I tell this story publicly a bunch because it really helped to shape who I am now. So the head of HR calls me. And this woman is like a cross between Claire Huxtable and my mother. and so when she speaks, you better be listening. And so I'm like, great, she must take all new hires to lunch. So we're walking to lunch in Manhattan. She's like, I don't take all new hires to lunch. And I'm like, then why are you taking me to lunch? And so she says, well, this company is a couple of decades old, and I want you to know that you're the first Black person hired in ad sales. And she's like, no pressure. and so, similar to Iris, my parents, my dad is a retired New York City bus driver, and my mother's a retired New York City nurse. So I didn't have the access into media that many of our peers and colleagues have. My neighbor, wasn't this CEO of, NBC, so I got into the door with a lot of pressure, and it's actually shaped how I show up, and how I show up in the community, how I show up at work, and how I try to be authentic, because so many people, and we know that access doesn't have a particular color, but we do know that certain people under-index on access. So I've made it my mission to help provide people with access, give them a shot so they don't have to have the conversation that I had to have with the HR lady. But I am fortunate for that experience. And subsequently, I was the first of everything as I moved up in that company. And so I wear it as a badge because it's important for me not to close the door behind me, right? And so that brings us to today's topic around connecting with community through multicultural marketing and brand authenticity. Iris, I will ask you this question, and hopefully we can start this dialogue. When you think about community, what does community look like to you?
I think that's really our brand. Oh wait, someone's calling. Community's calling. No, that is really what our brand is, and that's one of the things that we've been doing the last 5 years that I've been there. It's not about just what basketball is. Everybody knows basketball team. Everyone knows we have players. They trade out every year. Everyone understands how basketball works. If not, trust me, it took me a while the first year to learn. But the biggest thing, and this is actually my first sports job too. I didn't have a sports background, and that was one of the biggest things. I'm like, oh my God, I was like, they're not gonna hire me because I don't have a sports background. If you know how to do your shit, come do it over here. Just do some cool, dope stuff and come do it over here. That's who we hire. But for me, I think the biggest thing is the community is your employees. It starts with your employees. You gotta get the buy-in from your employees. And I know you guys have probably heard that before, but trust me, when you have to deal with it every single day, you gotta deal with characters, you gotta deal with everybody's stories, and then also, and everyone's responsibility and job. They're very passionate about what they do. You gotta get your employees a buy-in first, and then obviously the community. For me, the community is much bigger than just basketball. It's what we live, breathe, and who we deliver everything to. The marketing that we do isn't for just basketball fans. It is, it's great. You know, all the information, tickets and tune-ins, that's the biggest thing that we want to make sure everyone pushes, tickets and tune-ins. But everything that we do outside of it, which is why we opened up our social media platform called Mavs Off Court. If anyone's not following it, I would probably encourage you guys to follow it. But anything that we do off the court is really happening there, and that's really where the magic happens, where all the community that's really following us, getting to know us, and getting to know who we are as the Dallas Mavericks, why we donate things, why we volunteer for things, why we're a part of so many associations. I swear the biggest problem that we have is that we don't say no, and that just cringes on my team because we have to work on everything. But for us, there's a recipe to all that. There's a reason why we don't say no, because we haven't said yes in the past, and we have to continue to make sure that we're building that idea of who we are. And the biggest thing that when people start interviewing, or we start talking to vendors, or we start talking to people like yourselves in networking, it's like, what do you guys know for? Of course, you guys know Luca, and of course, Mark. But the other thing, the third or second thing that always comes up is the community piece that we're always doing, sorry. But for us, that is the most important thing that we want to make sure that we know, what people know us for. Because at the end of the day, well, the main thing that I tell my whole team, and of course people that we interview to come into the team, is that we can't control what happens on the court. Never can control what happens on the court, but we can control the narrative that happens off the court, and that's where we have the responsibility. You guys know there's so many followers that follow the players, and luckily then they follow the team. For us, it's tough. We have to keep building content. We have to continue to build our brand and to keep telling the same story over and over again, if not daily, if not weekly, if not monthly. For us, it really is important to make sure that people are aware of what we're doing in the community, to make sure that we're embracing that first, because at the end of the day, the fans that follow the players are going to leave. And if we didn't tell the story right, and we didn't tell people who we are and what we do, and our crafts and our values of who we are as a company, it falls flat, because at the end of it, then it's just a basketball team. But we are definitely more than that, and I think that's always been the goal for us, to make sure that we continue to tell that story.
Great. Thank you for that. And when you're speaking, everything, it just sounds so authentic, right? And to a certain extent, I think a lot of how you do your job is based on your intuition, combined with your education, combined with your experience. What would you say to advertisers, marketers, brands who may not have that intuition? Why is it so important for all of the brands that are represented in this room to pay attention to the community?
The biggest thing, the one thing that we do, and if you may think that we don't sit there and do this, we sit there and do this all the time. Everything that has our Mavs logo, even my photo back here, how is the fan going to feel? First question. Are they consuming, or am I getting through to them? Are they understanding the right message? That's part of advertising. That's just one-on-one marketing, right? But for us, we do that for every single thing, and we continue to make sure that we play on those basic 101 things every single day, because if we don't, we steer away from who we are. So for us, it's really important to understand, do they understand what I'm telling them? Do they know what I'm selling them? I'm not just selling tickets, I'm not just selling merchandise, I'm selling them who we are as a company. And that is the biggest thing that we do, from the huddle, from Mavs Take Action, from community, from our sponsorship, from everything. We turn away vendors that don't believe in the same values and crafts that we do. I'll tell you a quick story, and this guy he was so annoying to me. So I got on a call, and this is how big community is for us. I got on a call, and I remember this vendor, and I'm going to say who, because they are from Dallas. But I got on this call, and it was a printer, and they said, oh yeah, we want to make sure that we're the official Dallas Mavericks, printer. And I was like, why? I mean, why do you guys involved? Why do you guys want to be a part of it? I know why. I know from a sponsorship, and I know from a partnership. Trust me, I know exactly why. It makes sense. But this is who we are. Can you tell us what you guys do? And they're like, oh yeah, we're big in the community. I'm like, okay, let me stop you right there. Can you tell me what you mean by that? Well, we give, the church pamphlets. We give the church discounts on their pamphlets. And I was like, ay, Dios mío. This is exactly why we asked those questions. And then afterwards, obviously, that was an easy no for me. But I was like, no. You have to understand, what are you guys doing? What vendors are you guys using? Who are your employees? What do they look like? Do they look like what we look like as well? That is important for us, and we look at everything from that end. And trust me, sometimes sponsorship doesn't like to include me in meetings because I start turning things down. But it's educating them to understand what to look for, to make sure that what we say, what we stand for, is really spreading from everything else that we do, from our vendors, from our employees, from our customers, from our fans, everything. We have to make sure that we're representing our fans. There's 20,000 fans that show up to our arena. 30% of them are Latinos. I have to make sure that there's vendors that are Latinos that are here too. So for us, and I can go on that tangent, but I won't. But for me, that is important. That is the main thing that we want to make sure that we are adding that recipe and those ingredients back into what marketing is supposed to be. We have had so many fans. We have over 63 international fans that we also were catering to and are continue to cater to. That's another area that we also are focusing on this year. But for me, it really is making sure that we are matching what we say we are doing internally and not just talking about it, not just posting it on social, but it actually reflects from our employees first, like I said, but also making sure that from our marketing, our content, our social, everything else that we do, and the agencies that we work with, the vendors that we do, everything. And that's, I think, one of the things that someone had asked me, what's the most innovative thing you guys are doing for Hispanic culture? I'm like, there's nothing innovative. That's nothing innovative. It's just making sure that we are also represented, that there's also the Asian community that's represented for everything that we do for our Lunar New Year series, everything that we do. Using graphic designers from China, using everything that actually makes sense to make sure that we are representing these cultures authentically, because that's who we are. And I probably didn't answer your question, but I probably went on a tangent on something else.
That was good. Can you talk to us about the music?
Oh my goodness. So that was actually one of the questions that we were talking about. And they're like, oh, what's the most innovative thing you guys have done? And I'm like, well, there's nothing innovative in adding music. I was like, I want to hear some salsa and some norteño music in the games. I hope you guys know what that means. But I want to hear that music. My parents want to hear that when they're coming to the game. Those 30% of Latinos want to hear reggaeton. They want to hear Bad Bunny. They want to hear Karol G. They want to hear that stuff because that's important. That's not an innovative thing. Nothing innovative. It's just making sure that we're sprinkling and that we're also adding representation into everything that we do, as easy as music, as easy as the translations and mark. This is one thing I always say, please don't use Google Translate. Don't ever use Google, because anyone that speaks Spanish and reading that, you can tell right off the bat it's Google Translate. Making sure that you have authentic copywriters, that you have Spanish speakers as designers, that you have Spanish speakers as the vendors that we use to set up all our stuff for our parties or events, everything there. It matters, and you don't realize how much it matters until you sit there and you have 5 people that don't speak Spanish, and you have one person, me, that's in calls all day long, and I have to come and translate where the trash cans have to go. So that's an example, but that's what happens. So for me, even the music itself, and I had to argue with our in-game director, and I was like, you gotta play music every single game. We don't just show up in the month of March. By the way, NBA celebrates Hispanic Heritage in the month of March because we don't play in September, obviously. So I'm like, we show up for every game, play music every single game. Don't get me started on music, because that's really one of my hot spots.
And I think your passion that comes through, it's authentic, and how great is it to have somebody so authentic to have a seat at the table, right? And you know, I talk about this a bunch. I teach at Fordham University, and some of my students will say to me, Fordham, all right. So some of my students will say to me, how do I know if a company is right for me? And I tell them, I'm like, well, the interview process is a two-way street, right? That's number one. And number two, write down your values, whatever those values are, and then Google the company and the words leadership team. And I say to do that with every brand that you use if you're interested. Does that leadership team's values match yours? Does the complexion of that leadership team look like what you want it to look like? Does it look like the community? Are they going to make decisions at the boardroom table that are going to impact you? So, you know, I thank you for having that seat at the table, because without that seat at the table, you know, we're not hearing Bad Bunny during the game. You know, so I appreciate it, and I know we all do here as well. Can you talk about a little bit about how the Mavs show up and respond in the community? This morning we talked about, we heard so many marketers talk about moving quickly to capitalize on moments, whatever that moment is. I'd love to know, and really, you know, that's to raise brand awareness and to sell things, but when there's a need for the Mavs to be in the community, what does that look like?
I'm going to share a quick story because this actually is a representation of what we do every single day, every single year, and every single month. And our community team is stretched out. But when COVID happened, we're obviously running as a company and we're thinking, I'm an employee. But you also realize you're also a constituent. You're also going through it just like everybody else is. When COVID happened and everything started shutting down, the biggest thing, everything comes from the top. Our owner and our CEO were big on how do we pay our employees and the ushers that were at the games, that were missing the seven last games. I think you guys, there was a story about it, but it wasn't about media, and it was not about getting attention to that. It was about how do we give back to those people that are dedicated to us every single day, that show up to us, to our games every single, not only our fans, but also the ushers and the employees of the arena. He made sure to pay their salary or whatever they were working for the last 7 games that were obviously removed. And it just started from there. How do we start donating? How do we give back? How do we give food? How do we give food to, there were so many events during that time that were big aha moments, not only for myself, but also for our leaders. And realizing, that's when we realized that we're definitely much bigger than basketball. It's not just about that. It was a core shaker because we were donating food to schools, and we didn't realize that was the only time that they were having a meal. The other thing is we also got to make sure that we were spreading out those food donations, not just to the normal schools that we were going at. We were going to South Dallas. I grew up in East Dallas, so making sure we were in Mount Auburn and East Dallas schools as well. Making sure that the players started getting involved, making sure that they were also donating food and money to all the medical employees that were busy. Obviously, you guys know the stories, everything that they were doing for everybody, making sure that everyone was okay. Medical equipment, masks, everything. We just bought and we just donated everywhere. We didn't care how much it cost. We didn't care how much we were investing. We had the money to do it. We made sure that we did that. That is when everyone was really kind of holding hands. I'm like, all right, we're all in it. We're all in it to help out. We have to give back to the community that was always showing up to our games. Then the biggest thing for us too is, if you guys have gone to a game, which I hope you guys have, you guys know how much crap we give out. So that was one thing. We had so many t-shirts that we had purchased for games that we were going to play, that we were going to give out for the night. And I was like, okay, how do we give this stuff out and encourage people to go to those local restaurants that were closing down because obviously they didn't have the means to keep afloat. They didn't have customers coming because everyone was afraid to come out. A lot of them were not set up for digital consuming, obviously anything online or on DoorDash. So what we did is we turned to about 50 to 60 restaurants, local restaurants. I'm like, okay, you guys pick from your neighborhoods, make sure it was spread out, what restaurants we can give 500 items of our MAP stuff to them. It was nothing, none of that was a bother to us. It was how do we help? We literally took off our marketing and everything hat off, and we put on how do we help our own community back. So we gave out 500 items to each of these restaurants and encouraged them and just posted on social like, hey, just say, and we had to teach them how to, some of these we had to teach them how to post on social or their Facebook. It was only a Facebook page. It's like, hey, just say buy $20 worth of backles and then get this shirt for free. And encourage people to come to your restaurants. So that way, how do we drive traffic to these restaurants that really have been the best thing for us in our neighborhoods, especially when we're getting out at 11 o'clock at night of a game, and you just want to get some food and quickly go, and then they're not there anymore. So for us, it really hit us more as a team to realize that is what we are here for. That's who we are. And without even, this was not the goal, but we gained over 1 million new followers through social media for everything that our team was doing, our owner was doing, our CEO who was speaking everywhere she could, and then everything that we were doing to make sure that we're giving back all our stuff to make sure people had something to encourage them to go purchase somewhere. For us, what can we do as a team? That's what we did as a team. We came together as our own community to make sure that we're showing up for the people that are showing up for our games every single night, and they don't have to. And they choose to. So for us, we choose them as much as they choose us. That was one of the biggest reasons why we then, after that, we started partnering several different organizations, also Latino organizations. I sit on 6 boards. I get tired too. And if I have to represent and show up every single time for those boards to make sure people see us and are aware of what we're doing, then I'll continue to do that. But that is kind of a small story and just kind of a reason why we do everything that we do. And that was actually during my first year at CMO. I was like, crap, now it's COVID. What do I do? But we turned it around. We made sure everything was positive. We made sure that everything that we were doing that was for the community, that also comes from yourself, for the leaders there. We knew that was the answer for the second day that we were there. We were the last NBA team that played, and the next day everything got shut off. But for us, that just kind of gives you an idea of why we do what we do.
Great, thank you. I'm gonna ask one last question and leave this audience with some wisdom. So all of us collectively are a brand community. We're a community of brands, right? And I think that in our own way we serve our communities. What does winning look like as we continue to serve our communities? What should we be thinking about what winning looks like?
I think I kind of said all of it in a bubble, but it really is continue to invest in your employees. The team that I have right now I can call them at 11 o'clock at night and they know that I need something. I'm not calling about the weather. I don't care about the weather. But they react, they know that I'm here for them and I have their back. But for me, winning for the community piece of it with them, it starts there. And trust me, there's been things that have been thrown at us these last couple of weeks, as you guys know, that for us, when they still are standing and ready, like, okay, what's the next step? That gives you perspective. I'm like, okay, I'm the best leader that I can be every single day. I show them by actually picking up boxes at the arena, taking them wherever. I don't care. None of that shit is beneath me. I'm still just a person. I'm still here to help, and we're all here to help each other. But for me, that is the biggest thing. You start with your employees, and I know that sounds cheesy, but it is. It is. If you get a buy-in from your teams, and you guys are all part of a team right now, that you get the buy-in and you say, hey, we're going to go donate these Christmas presents, whatever, and everyone's just like, let's go, then everyone has that buy-in from you as a leader, from them as a colleague, as a coworker, but then also they believe in what you are selling, and you're selling the idea of who we are as a brand and as a company. I've said this before several times. I could care less about my title. When you walk out that door at 5:30 for 1 o'clock from us at the arena, you're just your name. That's the title that you guys should be worried about. And what people say, when I hear Brian, there's 3-4 things that I can think of, but it's not even his title. It's about he's loyal, he's great for the community, he's trustworthy, he's fun to be around, and he happens to be XYZ for Scripps. Nobody cares about that. But for me, that's the most important thing. And I think that's the return in investment from a community standpoint. When people say, oh yeah, it's Dallas Mavericks. They have Katie for whatever. Katie's our chief impact officer. She takes care of all the community stuff. But you have all these people, oh yeah, and there's Luca that played on Saturday and we lost. But at the same time, it's like that's the fourth or fifth thing that people are saying. That's how you know that you are making a bigger impact outside of just being basketball team.
Iris Diaz, everyone. Thank you so much.